In the last week of January and the early parts of February, almost all of February, there was a lot of tension along the border. You've read that news, right? A lot of shelling came from the Pakistan side. Many houses were damaged, many lives were lost, both civilian and military. Many villages along the border were evacuated. People were moved to other parts. The tension continues, and we all read the news, we watched the late night debates, and in our minds we formulated or formed the picture of an Indian border that is a constant source of stress. A week ago, the scientists at Los Alamos, they maintain something called the doomsday clock. It is a clock that shows you how close we are to nuclear annihilation. These scientists moved the needle by 2 more minutes. We are now 2 minutes away from nuclear midnight. So that's a picture that we have formed, we live with, and is based on fact. This, I don't know how well you can see it in the lights, this is a gentleman by the name of Resham Singh. What you see him doing is he's making fodder for his cattle. About less than 100 meters away from where he's doing his work, there was this cattle pen. Massive cows. I haven't seen cows that size in my life ever. Beautiful ones, well-fed, healthy, has a whole heap of them. He also owns a farm of about a little more than 40 hectares. He is prosperous. He lives in a small village. He has a daughter who is like some of you, currently doing her MBA, and a young son who, when I spoke to him, I asked him, it's a tiny little village, about 30 households and all. There's no opportunities for entertainment, for amusement. They don't even play cricket. I asked him what he does, and he says, look, I mean, I have my classes, and when I come back, there's enough work to do around here, and then we sit around and chat. So what do you want to do next? And he says, I'll take over my father's farm. You don't want to go abroad? He said, maybe go and study in Australia. I don't know why that's stuck in his head, but he wants to study in Australia if he can. But if he can't, he's absolutely happy to stay back here and work. Here's the thing though. This point is precisely 800 meters from the border. This farm actually runs along the border. If you've been to the border in this part of the world, and I'll tell you where this is in just a bit, you have the line, you have a barbed wire fence on this side and a barbed wire fence on that side. That's the Pakistani side and the Indian side. The land in between actually belongs to him. He goes there, tills the land, sows seeds, fertilizes them, waters them, harvests them. He and a few other farmers in that area. And when he does that, a couple of BSF guys trailing their guns very casually accompany them. That's more for form's sake than for anything else. He has absolutely no idea about conflict. I actually told him that. I said, when we're standing here and talking, this is what is happening elsewhere. He had no clue. This is Resham Singh's father. And that line, he told me something similar. Resham Singh's father has seen conflict in 1971. This place is called Pulkanji. If you know the history of the 1971 conflict, it is one of the areas where Pakistan entered our territory. The Indian army was pushed back for a bit, then they fought back. There was a major battle there. Several Indian soldiers lost their life. Again, about 500 meters away from this place, there is a monument to the soldiers who lost their lives. He talked about the 1971 conflict. He said, yeah, we had to leave our homes. We stayed away for about 5 days. Then the Indian army pushed the Pakistan army back, and we all came back to our homes. Were the homes damaged? No, not particularly. Did you suffer any kind of damage? He said, yeah, some of these shells were unexploded, they fell in the fields, and so we had to be a bit careful for a few months till everything was cleared, but otherwise nothing. I was with a couple of friends, and we kept asking, because you see, even in my mind, just like yours, border is associated with tension, with stress, with a feeling of uncertainty, with never knowing what's going to happen next. So I was trying to reconcile that mental image with what I was seeing over here, and I kept asking him that. I said, tension in? No. How about Kargil? He said, yeah, a few planes flew overhead. That's it. Nothing changed. Two images, both from the same place. Why is that happening? It is happening because, look, the border between India and Pakistan is 3,323 kilometers long. The line of control is 740 kilometers. The narrative of 740 kilometers stands in for the narrative of 3,323 kilometers, most of which are at peace, which run through the 4 states of Gujarat, of Rajasthan, of Punjab, and of Jammu and Kashmir. What we're seeing, what we absorb, is a warped picture. Why is this important to keep in mind? Because, I was told that the theme of this whole TEDx series of talks is about unfurling your sails. That's very nice to see. You unfurl your sails, you become what you're capable of becoming. Every moment of every day, you guys have to make decisions. If the quotidian decisions you make are not based on adequate information or full information, your decisions are likely to be wrong. I'm not saying that you're going to influence politics, I don't know though, but even in everyday life, what we are getting is bits and pieces of pictures. Why is that happening to us? Well, we make fun of the fact that, at least, we keep talking constantly about the fact that we have short attention spans these days. Too many distractions. I think just before lunch we saw a talk that also was about that little monkey in our heads that keeps jumping about from clickbait to clickbait. That is one. The second is you have these problems of fake news. You have the problem of viral stuff going through social media, influencing people who don't have the ability to figure out whether it is true or not. You also have another problem, which is that as the media as a whole becomes more and more economically stressed, media houses are not making money, contrary to some people in media are making money. That's a different thing. The media as a whole is operating at a loss. When that happens, staff gets reduced. The staff is reduced, the ability to spend time on research, on reading, on actually going to places, finding what the real stories are, and telling those stories to you, those are impacted. Therefore, information which is useful and valuable, that quantum is shrinking, noise is increasing, and increasing exponentially. We have all of these problems to cope with, but this is, in my opinion, the bigger problem. We have, either voluntarily or without our own conscious volition, we have surrendered our voices. We have surrendered our ability to tell our own stories. A country of 1.4 billion requires maybe 10 lakh journalists if you add all the languages and all the mediums together. A few lakh journalists and writers have been given our voices. They have been entrusted with the task of telling our stories. It's like governance, for instance. We believe that we are in a democracy. We are not. If you remember Civics 101, we are a democratic republic. What does that mean? We actually elect somebody to make decisions on our behalf. So do we then pick the person who is making a decision on our behalf? No, we don't do that either. We think we do. The reason we don't do that is because the party picks the candidate. Your choice is not who is the best person to represent, say, Bangalore, where I come from. Your choice is, this party picked X, the other party picked Y. Is X better than Y? That's it. The choices are limited, and then this guy goes and does whatever he wants, and you have nothing that you can do about it. You just live with it, suck it up. The same thing has happened with our stories. We have come to a point where we no longer use our voices, and if you remember your basic Darwin, when you stop using something, you lose it. We have lost our voices. We have lost the ability to tell our own stories. And this, by the way, is counterintuitive, because the first man, the first thing he did, he went out into the forest and he hunted his food. He brought it back to his cave, he cooked it over a fire. My apologies to the vegetarians among us. He cooked it on a fire, he consumed it, and then what was the next thing he did? He picked a brand from that fire, and with the blackened tip, he told the story of the hunt on the walls of this cave. Man's default setting is we either listen to stories or we tell stories. That is who we are, or that is who we used to be until we stopped. This is probably one of the last things that I want to talk to you about today, and that lion that you see, his name is Sisal. The story might resonate with some of you. He's a very famous lion, lived in the Matabeleland region of Zimbabwe. He was not only a tourist attraction in himself, he was also the subject of a Harvard study. William Palmer, a dentist from America, decided he wanted to prove how macho he was, went with a license to the forest, used a bow and arrow and shot Sisal. Now that sounds heroic, right? Sort of like what the cavemen used to do, go with these bows and arrows and spears and stuff like that, and kill animals much bigger than they were themselves, much more ferocious, but it wasn't a story of heroism. This is one of the newfangled bows and arrows that from half a mile away can actually find the target. The lion had no idea that he was under threat. It was minding its own business. He was shot, the arrow was embedded inside him, but he did not die. And he ran away looking for a safe place. He found a refuge. The arrow still stuck on his side. He was trying to lick his wounds, to heal himself. And these guys tracked that animal down through the blood trail. 12 hours of agony. They finally found the lion, shot him again, and he died. Somebody told that story, it became big, which is why the United States passed a law forbidding its citizens from hunting lions either in India or in Africa. Stories that are not told end up having no impact whatsoever. Stories that are told do have an impact. And these don't have to be big stories. We always think when we talk about writing, oh, these people are sort of God-gifted or somehow special, they have the ability to tell stories. No, that is why I brought up the example of the caveman. It does not take special skill. It just needs for you to understand that you have been given a voice and that voice needs to be used. 3 days ago, a man was traveling in a train. I don't know if you read that story. He was sitting in a compartment minding his own business. In the same compartment, he saw a group of girls, some 20, 25 of them, and something seemed odd. A couple of them were crying, the others seemed very low-spirited and sad. All he did was he posted this on Twitter, marking the railway police. He said, there are these 20 girls and something doesn't seem right. At the next station, the police came into the compartment, checked, and broke a sex trafficking ring and rescued 26 girls. We need to tell our stories. We need to understand that Our inability to tell stories, or our reluctance, or even our abdication, is creating an environment where the information that is available to all of us is skewed, incomplete, and it is this that we base both little and big decisions on. The risk escalates with every single day and with every single story of this kind, which is why the Africans have a proverb: until the lion learns to write, every story glorifies the hunter. That's a largely more profound thought, and it's not a surprise that it comes from Africa, because, yeah, it's not just the African lions, it's also the African people whose stories have, over time, been warped and manipulated into something it is not. But it doesn't have to be the big stories. It has to be our stories, and there is no one. We also make a fundamental mistake when we sit down and say, hey, this happened to me, is it worth telling? We think, look, what's unique about it? It happens 100 times a day to 100 people a day. The point, though, is every single story is two things at the same time. One, it is unique. It is unique to you, who experienced it and how you process it, and it is universal. Some form or the other, that story is being replicated in all of us, and that is why we empathize with the stories that we hear. We understand them, we take them in. In this particular case, we are the lions. We are the ones who've lost our voices. We are the ones whose stories are being told by others who are not qualified to tell these stories for the most part. And we are the ones who, partly by our own sin of omission, partly by the others' sins of commission, are now living in an environment where every single thing that we think of as a fact is probably not. At best, it's half a picture. And half a picture is not good enough for people, particularly people in the place that you are in your lives, and what you are going to be doing once you're out of this campus. That's not a good basis for making the decisions that you will have to make. So I'll leave you with that thought. Until the lions. Thank you very much.